Welcome to another episode of the Maroon Machine Podcast. Today I'm joined by Kelty's, well, I suppose one of the new inductees into our team of the decade that we've been doing on the podcast. Played 9 seasons with Kelty. It's Allan Fleming. How you doing, Allan?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me back onto this.
Yeah, no, it's good. We're dead pleased to obviously get you back on. We spoke briefly and fired something out after you got that sort of first spot in the team of the decade, and we were keen to get it done. So it's good to be able to do so. Before we get on to yourself and your career, though, now that it's sunk in a wee bit getting that spot in the team, and also you've started to maybe see some of the other players that are built up around you, how are you feeling about that spot, and especially I suppose when you look at that back four in front of you, we've got Gaz Layton, Tam Courts, Murray Carstairs and Scott Linton that have, since you got your spot being voted into the team. What do you think about how it's shaping up?
It's been a very, very strong team. I didn't play with Scott, but I've played against him when he was at Clyde and whatnot, and he's technically very good at it. For me, the life back when I was there was Conrad. I think Conrad was second, and he was a bit unlucky to not get in the team. So, it must have been really, really close. Scotty must have done quite well in the seasons that he's been at Kelty to get in the team, because Conrad was steady, and he was always a fan's favourite as well.
Oh no, absolutely. I think it yo-yoed between the two of those guys, and there's an argument both for them both to be in there. I think Scott just had a tremendous season with Kelty, racked up 18 goals and 18 assists, whereas Conrad, it was over the longer period of time, obviously, so it could have gone either way. Conrad definitely a big name that's missed out. Roger Duffin as well.
I was going to mention Roger. It was Roger and Tam in front of me, and again, must have been pretty. I've trained a few times with Murray, and again, he's fair play to him. He's done well, because Roger steady Eddie, been capped with Junior Scotland and won leagues for Bo'ness. You knew what you got with Roger.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a testament to how good the sort of Kelty teams have been over the last 10 plus years. That those guys have sort of just missed out on finding a spot. But we're not obviously here to talk just about the team of the decade. We want to find out a bit about yourself. So if we go back to the very start, what was your sort of route into football? Where did it all begin for yourself?
It started at Rosyth Rec, and I was about 10, not 8. I think it was 8. Playing under 10s. There was a flyers going around the local school, and the goalie, I was friends with the goalie. It was the year above, and he handed me a flyer and was like, "Just come along, and see what you think." I went along and enjoyed it. I enjoyed it immensely. It was good.
Were you straight in there at goalkeeper? Was that sort of the position that you liked for the get-go?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much. You just went. Obviously, when you're growing up and playing, you played outfield. But when it come to make the decision about playing football, for some reason I just automatically went in goals. I just enjoyed going in goals.
Yeah. Now, who are some of the people when you were younger that you sort of? Everybody always talks about how they sort of mould their play, or they had professionals that they looked up to. Who were some of them that stood out for you?
Well, obviously, Andy Gorham and Peter Schmeichel at the time were the ones in Britain. And Gorham, really, really good shot stopper, and Schmeichel, big, tall, physique wise, just an absolute mountain. You
always hear about, particularly outfield players, when they sort of see one of their favourite players do something and then they try to mimic it. Did you ever try to mimic anybody's style of play when you were sort of learning, or were you sort of just going your own path?
Well, again, being a Rangers fan, I always looked up to Gorham, but I remember coaches saying to me, "Look, don't look at his sort of style, because you're going to be, you're taller than what he's going to be." So I was like, all right. So I maybe looked at Schmeichel and Van der Sar. Van der Sar was another one I quite liked when I was. And then latterly, when he broke through I have a great thing for Buffon. I love Buffon, and even now Neuer and Alisson and Ederson have brought goalkeeping on to the next degree. It's the next level sort of thing nowadays. Whereas you've got to be a sweeper as well as be able to play, as opposed to just you're in goals, just kick and catch it, and you've got to be a player now.
Oh, absolutely. And do you ever sit and watch those boys and sort of think to yourself, when they make a decision, maybe when they come too far out of their line or they don't come off the line quick enough, do you sometimes get frustrated watching them, or do you sort of reflect back to your own playing style?
No, again, I'm a connoisseur of the goalkeeping art. I do watch what other goalies are doing and whatnot, and I hate folks slagging goalies because aren't they goalies? I get their point. They're there to make can be controversial, but until you've actually played in goals or whatever, you have no idea what it's actually like. You're that last man. You know you can't make a mistake.
No, absolutely. So after, what was your time like at Rosyth? Actually, was it you playing quite a successful league, or was it at that point more about development?
It was really good. I had 2 years under 10s where we were sort of the Colts team. It was the older team. There was the two of us in the same league. We were the younger team, and then obviously the older one. They were expected to be challenging for the league. But I remember, when you first go in, we were a year younger than everyone. We used to kind of turn up, and we were a really, really good team. But that year made a loads of difference. We were going and getting beat. But again, when you're that age, it was just enjoyable. And for being a goalkeeper, and that I was getting lots to do, so I was loving it. It wasn't a case of me going there and not having a lot to do, which sometimes now you don't mind that. But you ask any goalie, they want to be busy, they want to be making saves, they want to be making a difference. So even when we were getting beat, I was coming off the park getting happy with my own performance. And then what I remember, the reason we come on a great deal that year, the first year, because we played the side team, the older team, towards the start of the season, and I think they beat us quite easily, quite convincingly, as we were still a young team getting to know each other. But as the season progressed and went on, we drew 2-2 with them, but we were 2-0 up with 10 minutes to go, and it was just the fitness of that year stronger. They came back and they drew 2-2, and we were proud, and we were loving it, the fact that we were, and the young ones would be taking points off the stronger team. Yeah. And then the following year, you become the older team, and that the year together, just we beat everyone. We won the league quite convincingly, and we got to the Scottish, and we played Tynecastle, and we got beat. They were a big team, and I think they still are a big team in Edinburgh, and they had like Fletcher. Darren Fletcher was playing for them at that time, and we got beat. I think it was 2-0. We got beat, and we were gutted. But I remember coming back off the pitch knowing that I'd done well. And I must have done something well, because it come to the re-signing, and I was re-signing for the side at the end of the year, and it was. I was always like, I'm happy. My dad sort of goes to me, look, are you sure this is what you're wanting? I was like, what do you mean? And he was just like, I know that there's other teams in for you in a better league. And I was like, looking at him as I should say, what fun of it. And because I don't know how he ended up with it dependent from that day when we played Tynecastle again. I don't know whoever it was had handed it to me. He kept it, and he just put the pendant down in front of me and goes, "Look, they're interested in you, and I think it'd be a better decision for you, better for you personally. You're going and testing yourself against better people, getting better players." In the Edinburgh League at that time was seen as the better league. Rosyth at that time, the team that I was in, were the big fish in the sort of smaller pond. Fife wasn't. It had lots of teams, but Rosyth were the main team.
Yeah.
So that was my first sort of decision that I had to make. Did I stick or did I twist? And it was as we go on through this podcast, you'll get to know these decisions are hard. Even back then, I'd grown up with these boys, been playing 2 or 3 years with them, knowing them in and out. It wasn't just a case of they were players. We were friends at that age as well. I used to go around and cut about with a few of the boys after the Saturday game, on the Saturday afternoon, just doing things, and it was hard, but ultimately I made a decision to go to Tynecastle, and I went there to win the league over there and to hopefully win the Scottish. But ironically, the following season, Rosyth went and won the Scottish Cup, and I was there, so I left and they won. So again, as we go through this podcast, you really see the occurring theme of that.
Yeah, it must have been frustrating, but was your dad quite a big part of that youth footballing? Because that's a big commitment to, say that again. I assume he had to take you over to Edinburgh to train with Tynecastle a couple of times a week and play your weekly games there.
My dad, again, like I heard with Ross when he was speaking and doing his one, my dad, he would never interfere, but he was always there. And again, he would drive me here. He was my driver here, there, and everywhere. And as we were progressing, I was training with Tynecastle. Had an affiliation with Hearts, and I was training with Tynecastle, and I was training with Hearts. So you're talking sometimes 3-4 nights a week, plus your game at the weekend. So I'm really thankful for my dad. When you think about it, I've got a wee one now, and I'm thinking to myself, I've got all that to come. Driving the length to Scotland just for him to get a game.
Exactly. But I suppose it's rewarding, and you wouldn't do it otherwise. It'll be same for your dad. So, what was your time like at Tynecastle? You obviously went there to test yourself a little bit more, and to push up, I suppose, in the level of skill. How was it when you were there? Did you find that from your move?
Yeah. It was the Edinburgh League is very competitive. It was even the sort of smaller teams. You're playing them away, and it's very hostile. You're going down to Cramond, and every person's out with their dog getting round the pitch, and you making it very intimidating. You're turning up in the best of gear, and everyone just hated us. Everyone hated Tynecastle, everyone hated Hutchie, and it's the Salvey as well. Salvey Boys Club, they were good. There was Leith, and they were good. There was so many good teams in that league.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of those teams are still, especially your likes of Leith and Hutchie and Tynecastle as well, still very big in the youth football stage. Was there any sort of big games that stood out while you were there? Obviously, you mentioned that game against Rosyth against Tynecastle for your time, and even against the age level above. Was it a season where there was any big games that sort of stood out for you, or was it sort of just the season as a whole?
No, it was the season as a whole, but it was also, you had, again, I forgot to mention, Celtic Boys East were in that league as well. So you had all the Edinburgh. So I joined Tynecastle because of the reason that Darren Fletcher was there, and everyone sort of knew who he was at the time. So you're thinking to be a teammate with him would be good. And then he left Tynecastle in that summer to go to Celtic Boys East. So the games against Hutchie and Celtic Boys East were always, even Salvey as well, but especially Hutchie and Tynecastle, and Tynecastle and Celtic were it was like Hibs v Hearts, Celtic v Hearts. They were good, and Fletch had left to go to Celtic. So every time we played against him, there was a bit of needle, and the coaches were and they didn't like the fact that he'd left them to go to Celtic Boys East, because I think they thought that he was going to be their boy, but he left and went to Celtic, and he was. He had his pick of the teams. So I remember we played in umpteen finals against Celtic, and I I think we won a few, and I think they won a few as well. I mean, it was really, really close.
Yeah, and it's obviously great for yourself as well to be able to test yourself against that sort of calibre of player. What came after Tynecastle? What was sort of your next step?
Well, in the meantime, when I was still playing with Tynecastle, I was like, obviously, word that got around that it was half decent, or so folks say anyway. That I was training with senior teams. I was training with like the Flem, I was training with Rangers. I was training with Hearts. So it was all those. It was a busy time. You know what I mean? You were out the door all the time and you training. So after Tynecastle, whilst training with these senior teams, I went and joined like the Hearts boys club in there, because Tynecastle, that team more or less went and joined Hearts. You know what I mean? That whole team went and joined Hearts. So again, that season was good. Again, strong season, and played a few games for Hearts in amongst in the Hearts, proper Hearts, as opposed to the boys club.
Yeah,
you get every month or so you play the West Coast Glasgow West Coast Hearts team, and you would play. I mean, it was always a bit of a grudge match there as well. I mean, east to west, it's always the case. You know, you didn't want to get beat off the beaches.
And who were considered the better Hearts side at the time, the east or the west?
I don't know. I think everyone always thinks West best. You know what I mean? It's always a persona. Everyone thinks West's always best. But I would say the East team were the better team.
Yeah.
Like we used to go through there. We used to go through there and beat them all the time. But again, it was enjoyable. Again, on a Tuesday night or something through in Glasgow playing against a Hearts team for the West. It was good.
Yeah, so going to continue building your experience. So how long did you spend with that Hearts team?
I had three seasons. I think it was 3 seasons with them, and it come to the stage where Hearts were showing an interest. I went away to the Amsterdam Cup.
Right.
Away, it was good. We all went across there, and there was 2 teams that went. There was the older team, which the goalie for that team was Craig Gordon. So it was myself and Craig was in the older team. I was in the younger team. I think we both won the tournament, and I think we both ended up getting like goalie of the tournament that there. So it was good, and I got on well with Craig, and it was in our paths sort of. We crossed later on when we went to Cowdenbeath, but we were getting similar. We were always sort of nip and tuck it. We were thought of quite the same, quite highly. And we both I got offered an S form and everything, and it was something that it was keen to take. But my dad, I spoke to my dad, and my dad was like, "Look, you're only 12, 13-year-old. It's a big commitment to sort of tie yourself to a schoolboy form at that age. You mean you're getting recognised here and there. So again, in hindsight, maybe signing that schoolboy form with Hearts, you never know."
Yeah, no, it's one of those things, and you've still gone on to obviously have a decent career. What was your next step on the journey after sort of those few seasons at Hearts? Because you're obviously still young at this point.
Well, yeah, at Hearts, well, I then had been sort of, it come to a decision where it was between sort of staying at Hearts and going to Rangers, who at this time where it was the first ever youth kind of pro youth league,
right.
And Hearts didn't have the funding, or Hearts weren't taking that step until the following season. But it meant I was going to have to play a year above myself. But you know, I mean, at that age, when Rangers come calling, and you're thinking again, it's a chance to progress, and again you're going to be playing against proper pro youth players. You sort of take that decision. And again, it wasn't an easy decision because I knew Hearts were going to be joining it, but it was going to be the following year.
Yeah.
So you sort of go, do you wait that year, or do you take a chance and go with Rangers? Again, at Rangers and even at Hearts, you're just a name, you're just a number. You know what I mean? You're just right. You're in, you're out, and yeah, it was good. So I took the decision to go to the Rangers, and again we're through there and got training after outside Ibrox, came twice a week. Came my dad straight in for work, and it was like a case of him, either having his tea quickly or eating on the go to get through the Ibrox. You know what I mean? For 6 o'clock, you know what I mean? He's finishing his work at 4:30, so and we're out on the road by 4:45, 5 o'clock. So it was really hectic. You know what I mean? You're at school, you're coming to an age where you're going to high school, and you've got homework, you've got other stuff to do. But football for me was always, again, as well as the school, but I always had a focus, like I wanted to do well at football as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's a lot to say, obviously, big decisions, even at a young age, to sort of pave out your career path in football. What was it like to go to Rangers? Obviously, you said it was their sort of first time in a pro youth sort of setup. How did that differ to what you were used to?
It was very regimented. You know, it was very structured. It was, you must be here, you must be there. You mean, whereas Hearts, a boys' club, and that it was still strict, but you mean you had to be here for a certain time. If you were late, you didn't get fined as such, but you know what I mean. It was sort of held against you. You know what I mean, you always felt as if you couldn't be late, which again I'm never one for being late, but again, the way you were treated at Rangers and that, it was brilliant. You mean, you got all your boots, all your gloves. You know, I couldn't have want for anything. And
no.
I abused that a wee bit. I could just going up again. You mean going up every couple of weeks and training, taking the same pair of boots, saying, "Oh look, my boots are split," or whatever. And honestly, I could have got that year. Gloves, you know, and boots, gloves, and obviously my brother. He was sort of carving his own career in the background, so I sorted him out with like boots and gloves and whatnot as well. So honestly, I could have opened a sports shop and made an absolute fortune.
Obviously, we spoke about sort of prior to recording about your brother's path as well, and how it sort of crossed with Kelty in the Scottish Cup a few weeks back. What was it like? Having your brother there, obviously, as going down sort of the same path, goalkeeper for you, were you able to sort of bounce off each other with the way your development was going, or was it a lot more of you passing it down to him?
No, we did sort of. I always looked out for him. I mean, I was a big brother. I'd probably say it was me passing it on to him. Whereas now it's sort of we both look out for each other and whatnot, and always can text. It's hard to get. I mean, he stays in Annan, so it's not as if I can pop round to his bit and sort of say, "All right, do you want to chew the fat over?" And you can only speak when we can speak. You know what I mean? It can sometimes be hard, but when we do sort of talk or whatever, we try and sort of make sure that we're all good. We talk, not just about football, the things in general. You know what I mean? And
no, that's all.
It was weird because he joined the Recite team. So he's 2 years younger than me. So when he joined, and he didn't want to be a goalie because he didn't want to be seen as, I mean, in my shadow as such. You know what I mean? Because I had a fairly good reputation as being okay and being all right. He didn't want to be, and he was wanting to be like a centre half or something, or a midfield game. He just loved kicking folk. He just loved kicking folk. You know, he would come home dirtier than me sometimes when he was younger. He used to come in and watch the games with my dad and whatnot. He'd be playing with the subs on the sidelines and just diving about, and he would come home muckier than me.
That's brilliant. So, see, just before we move on for your time at Rangers as well, how competitive was it at that sort of youth level? Was it a huge step up, or?
Yeah, but at the time it seemed really, really big. And for whatever reason, at Rangers, I maybe lasted in that sort of league about 6 months before I had the feeling that I wasn't really wanted, if you know what I mean. I remember going through one Monday and walking the away change room like always, and it was in the middle of a team talk, and I walked in and it was like, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, well, "What do you mean? You're not here tonight and training up." Like, well, sorry, I've not been told. And they I sort of worried. They're like, "Right, go and they didn't even involve me in the warm up or whatever and say, look, you've made this effort." They just sort of gave me a training kit and said, look, go and work in the gym or whatever, and just and they're like that, can daft fifers, blah blah, and didn't listen, blah blah. And it wasn't until that the other boy who was older, again, he was in the older team, he turned up as well. So they sort of thought, right, well, maybe we didn't tell them. So it was just little things. It was a frustrating time at Rangers. You know, the training was really, really good, and I went there full of confidence, knowing that I could do a job. And I got, like, again, we went away to a Premiership tournament and played against like the Man U, and we'll go again. We'll go to the tournament, and I went into the season really, really confident, flying. But for some reason, it just didn't take to me. There, I wasn't as tall as I was now, and they gave it the old. We don't know if you're going to be tall enough, and it's the same. Same every, yeah. So it wasn't. Again, for the training was really, really good, but it was frustrating because I remember going through. We had to be through Ibrox for 9 o'clock one day. It was like we're playing Celtic, and we had to be there with 11 o'clock kick-off. So we were there, and then obviously the parents. It was very much, you know. Sometimes the parents could like sort of stand about outside, but whereas at the pro youth they were sort of told, don't come anywhere near us, sort of stay in your cars, don't let us sort of deal with it. So you're like, I remember coming out and looking for my mum and dad getting in the stand, and everyone had come through, and I wasn't stripped, but I had to sit on the bench. You know what I mean? And you got told you weren't. They brought another boy in, and I wasn't stripped, but I had training gear, but I had to hang about all day because we were doing a training session after the game as well. So it was just wee things like that. You know what I mean? It just got frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine, and yeah, I think especially being sort of a new system as well, there'd have been a lot of things that they were sort of figuring out and probably went a bit over the top with terms of the simple things, just like looking after the players that they've got. But what was sort of, you made that decision after your 6 months there, obviously learned a wee bit, but decided it wasn't for you. What decision did you make after that?
I went back to Celtic Boys East in the Edinburgh League because I had a fairly good reputation in the Edinburgh League, and for being half decent. I went back and finished the season from the January to the end of the season to the May, and went and played there. Won a cup and a few cups, and again it was good, and it felt weird me being out of the Rangers fan. I remember having that conversation that my dad again was like, in Celtic and are interested in you, and I was like, no, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to get obviously. And Dad was like, no, don't be silly. You know what I mean? It's an opportunity in the day, and you can't even afford to think like that. I mean, they're putting their neck out not even for you. And I went, and to be fair, it did feel weird because again, I was, like you said, I had sports stuff and had all the goalie bombs. All my stuff was Nike because Rangers were Nike at the time. I had Nike boots, Nike gloves, just everything was from Rangers. I remember I used to get pelters, you know, and just because all the boys were like Celtic fans, and I would turn up like, and they were red, white, and blue Nike gloves, and you know, they would just give me pelters, you know. And
but again, clash with the green a bit.
Yeah, again, I played the sort of second half of that season with Brian Ritchie, his big brother again, Chris. So it was I'd been sort of full circle. And I'd been at Rosyth with Chris, and I was coming and playing the sort of second half of that season. It come to the end of the season, and I think Dunfermline come in for me, and I went there. Again, it was a chance to go back and play sort of pro league. Again, like what Ross has said in the past, Dunfermline, compared to like say your Hearts, your Rangers, and everything, their youth setup wasn't the greatest. It wasn't as professional. Don't get me wrong, it was still okay, and they done well for like they used to pick you up from school and take you out to Oakley, and we'd have a teacher there, so you had to do your homework or your schoolwork before you done your training. But in terms of the actual structure to the training, it wasn't quite the same as like say your Hearts and your Rangers.
No, and it's obviously an important part of your game, especially when you're at that young age. I know that when it progresses a wee bit in your career, you want the training to become a bit simpler because you know how to play football. But when you're at that young age, that's a massive part of that structure of a sort of training session. How long did you end up spending at East End Park?
I was there for a season because, again, I was enjoying the games, but I wasn't so much enjoying the training. And at this point, my brother was he was at St Johnstone, right. And he was doing quite well there at this point. And we played St Johnstone for Dunfermline, and I played well that game. And I remember getting after the game, and there was the coaches, it was the same coach that had my brother. He came up and spoke to me and was like, "I can well play today, blah blah blah. I can see that sort of goalkeeping gene runs in your family, because I've got Greg, blah blah blah." And I think the following day or whatever, they phoned and asked me to go and train with them.
Right.
So that was good. But again, I was also conscious of, because when I left Hearts to go to Rangers, Hearts sort of were a bit off with Greg because he was doing well, but I don't know if they took the hump because I went to Rangers. They disregarded him. So, and he was doing well, but then he sort of had to go. He went back and played in the Fife League and had to sort of basically rebuild his career himself back up, because through no fault of his own. I mean, he was doing well, and so I was wary. As much as I was looking forward to maybe going to St Johnstone, I was also wary that I didn't want to ruin it for Greg, if you know what I mean, as well, because I know what he was gutted. I mean, at the time when he got told that he wasn't wanted, he could understand why they were wanting him, because I'd said no to them.
Yeah,
so
no.
I played the year at St Johnstone. Again, went down to the Premiership tournament. Again, got goal of the tournament. Again, I enjoyed it, and then sort of it got till about. And they were, again, at that time, the start of the season, they were like, look, that was when I was about 15-year-old, and looking, and the next step would be going in full time. And I was sort of thinking, they were sort of saying at the start, look, nothing's for granted, but keep doing what you're doing, and there was something there for you. And obviously, it started the season really, really well. And this time, we bumped into Rangers, because I remember getting Greg. They were playing at the Trevy in Dunfermline, and I'd obviously shot up a wee bit, and I remember seeing Rangers, and I went and spoke to the managers, and they didn't recognise me to begin with, and then they were like, it finally twigged, and they were like, how did that come from? I was like, well, I always told you I was due another growth spurt because I was playing the year above myself anyway, but they just didn't give me the opportunity. But again, went there, was doing well, and then the manager sort of changed, and he brought a lot of his West Coasters again a current team. West is best, and I sort of was getting minutes here and there, but it wasn't what I was wanting, and it wasn't as often as I'd like. You know what I mean? The 330s were maybe getting 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, sorry, as opposed to maybe 1.5 out of 3 or the 2. You're wanting the more. So it sort of petered out that season, and it got to the end of the season where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. You know what I mean? Because I know that the coaches were the youth coaches were wanting to give me something, but that was about the time when the deal, everyone was just getting shut, and the whole deal was, I think it was a satanic deal. Clubs were cutting back, and it just went totally pear-shaped, and squads were getting cut right back. And I was maybe getting seen as a risk, so they weren't willing to take a risk on a boy that they weren't sure. That they knew there was something, but they weren't willing to take the risk.
Yeah, that's obviously got to be frustrating for yourself as well. After obviously putting in the work and obviously working your way well through the youth ranks, how close were you to sort of signing that first pro contract then?
At St Johnstone, well, at the start of the season, it was a given. It was guaranteed. Well, I say guaranteed, nothing's guaranteed, but they were given all the signs that, look, you're doing really, really well. There's a place for you, blah, 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 blah. And then, as I say, maybe it was October, just before Christmas, and they brought the other manager in, and it just, again, it petered out, and you were turning up to games knowing that you weren't going to be starting, which for a goalkeeper, you need to be starting games. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than training and then knowing that you're going to get at that age, knowing you're going to get on, but you're not starting games. You want to be starting. You want to, and you could be coming on and you're either getting really, really beat really bad, or you're winning, or you know, you're scared to go on and make a mistake because it was a draw at the time or whatever, and you make a mistake and you end up getting beat. I didn't enjoy the sort of last 6 months of St Johnstone, so I wouldn't say I was that close, to be honest. It was close, but it wasn't that close because they weren't willing to take the chance. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Aye, and obviously circumstance as well was unfortunate. So obviously when that didn't materialise, what was your next step?
It was in the summer. I was just I was at a loose end. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was going to be 16. I was at that. You know what I mean? A lot of folk that I knew were going full time. You know what I mean? If I'd maybe stayed at Dunfermline, I knew I would get a full time contract there because there was boys and that I was in the same team with, and got offered full time. And I was sort of, in that summer, I was sort of like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Because I hadn't really played, I was sort of forgotten about it, if you know what I mean. I was sort of, I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. And it was Andy Forbes, actually. He was at Cowdenbeath at the time, and obviously I'd known Andy for years before. My dad grew up with Andy at work and whatnot, so Andy got in touch and was like, but nothing set in stone here, but do you fancy coming along and just ticking yourself over till something comes up, or use us as a training facility to keep himself ticking over. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I'm doing nothing else at the moment anyway. And it's still a sort of senior team. Maybe it wasn't maybe the teams that I'd been at before, but it was the only offer I had, so I felt as if I've got to go and at least train. You know what I mean? Just to keep. You never know who could come in. And Craig Levine at the time, we must have spoke to Andy and said, look, we want to sign him. So there was me doing 2 training sessions. I maybe could have, got another team, but that was the only offer at the start of the season. So I thought, right, I was going to be playing, and it was under 18s at the time, with a view to push and hopefully to get in the first team.
Absolutely, and when you turned up at Cowdenbeath, one of the pros, I suppose, was it was local football for you, a wee bit less travelling. But what was it like making that step up to that under 18s, and how long before you sort of got your chance to progress, I suppose, up into the senior team?
Well, I was sort of 16 at the time, and I was sort of training. But with the goalkeepers, you're always, in amongst the first team goalies anyway. So you were even from that age. Andy liked his numbers, and I think he still like that now. He likes numbers, and if you can see that you're not going to sort of break the session down, and I want to keep sort of maybe constantly stopping him to coach you. You know what I mean? He sort of seen that I had the basics there. I could come in and hold my own. So I went in there, obviously played a few games on the Sunday for the youth team and trained the goalies and sort of joining in the games at the end. And more or less right from the get-go, you were sort of thrown in, and you sort of spell it. It was always the two older goalies and maybe the two under 18s goalies, and sort of spell it about. You know what I mean? Again, you always found yourself going up towards again. That's what you wanted to be. You wanted to be up, testing yourself in that environment.
Yeah.
So it progressed till, and I was about 17. It was November. It was a November time. I remember Andy saying to me, "Look, you're going to be on the bench today. It was the Thursday, or whatever. You're in the squad. You'll probably be on the bench." And for me, I was like, "Wow!" Okay, you know what I mean? It was the game. The first game I was on the bench was against Clydebank at the time, and they had a lot of ex-pros. You know what I mean? It was like the goal at the time was Henry Smith, Billy McKinley was there, Darren Jackson. It was all the boys that were sort of being Premier League players at that time. It was when Wet 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 was sponsoring them, so they were obviously they were chucking cash about for the sort of older boys coming towards the end of their career. But it was a fantastic experience. You know what I mean? You were like, wow. You know what I mean? You're used to watching these boys on the telly.
Yeah, of course. And that first game on the bench, or the first game you were told you were going on the bench, how did that materialise? How did you end up getting some playing time, or was it much longer before you did?
No, I was sort of on the bench from that, from 17 right the way through the sort of second season, and still playing on the Sunday for the youth team. But it come towards the sort of end of that season, and Andy was like to me, "We need to get you out." You know what I mean? It's a fantastic experience for you sitting on the bench, but we need to get you out playing games. So it got to the stage where I went and spoke to the manager and said, "Look, I'm totally enjoying the experience, but I want to be playing games. You know what I mean? I'm getting youth games, but I want more than that. You know what I mean? I'm basically wanting to be in your first team, but in order to do that, I need to be playing men's football. You know what I mean?" So I went on loan to, at the time it was Whitehill Welfare's boys club team, the East of Scotland team, and I enjoyed myself there. You know what I mean? It was getting games every week. It was. I was younger, and they were sort of coming towards. They were the sort of second year under 18s at the time. I was sort of playing above myself. So at the time, you're playing against sort of adults as such. It wasn't like the first team experience where it's grown men. It was sort of in between stage, which was good. You know, and it was good for me going and getting regular games there. But at the same time, I was still training with Cowdenbeath, so I was always still in and amongst it. You know what I mean? So I played a season's worth of games there. Come back in the summer. Again, it was like, ready to push on. Let's see what we've got. And again, it was like, you're doing well. We've heard a good report, but I was like, well, I'm going to have to go out on loan again and go and play. It was that Whitehill team then went from Whitehill to a Musselburgh Windsor team. So I signed for them, went and played. It was half a season up to them with them, and then that was then Cowdenbeath, Keith Wright at the time called me back, put me back on the bench. Still playing the youth games, but was sort of, they were looking for me to push, and Andy was pushing for me. And at the time, Gary O'Connor was the goalie. He was at the ex-Hearts goalie years ago. He was the number one at the time. And they actually brought in Craig Gordon from Hearts. He was young. He was a year, so they brought him in for Hearts, and he played the second half of the season for Cowden, and I was sort of his backup.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a bad. Gary was a good goalie in his day as well. He played with Berwick and whatnot. He was at Cowdenbeath. He was I remember him being one of the older goalies at Hearts when he was one of the sort of under 18s goalies when I was at Hearts at that back in.
Yeah.
So he was like one of the sort of wide teams. So it was weird how Gary went. He remembered me and obviously knew Craig when he came in. It was weird because you remembered me from being that young boy to now and looking to take his position ultimately.
Yeah, and I think you see that quite a lot within football teams, that there is a close relationship between goalkeepers. It doesn't seem to be as competitive for sort of playing time and positions as you maybe get in other teams. It's all about helping the guy underneath you and bringing him up to the same level. So it's good to have somebody there that you'd already experienced some time with. So obviously by this point, Craig Gordon's sort of starting goalkeeper for Cowdenbeath. You're still playing a wee bit of youth football. How long did you spend sort of Cowdenbeath in that position?
Well, that season I was thinking, right, I might get a chance here, and then they brought in Andy Carlin from Stennis Junior. I think at the time Andy was a good goal. I got on well with Andy. But I got to the stage where I felt as if I was stalling. You know what I mean? I wasn't getting. I was too old to play youth football, even though they still play. They could still play an overage goalie. At that, it got to the stage where that was enough. You know what I mean? I'd outgrown youth football. It was false. It wasn't. It wasn't what it was. So I got to maybe I played a few games. I eventually broke in about November time when I was. I played a game. I remember Andy texted me in the morning of the game. Andy was a typical Ouija patter. I remember him texting me saying, "Look, you're in the day," and I was like, "Aye, very good." He's like, "No, I'm being serious. And you're actually in. I've been up all night, and I've been sick. I've been up all night, and I'm not travelling." And I still fully expected him to turn up on the bus, but no, I wasn't. It was when the manager pulled me aside and goes, "Look, you're going to be playing today." It was away to Montrose, funny enough. And it was for some reason I wasn't that nervous. You know what I mean? I just sort of took it in my stride, and we drew one each of the game. And I remember doing quite well and thinking, right, I know I can play this level now. You know what I mean? But as soon as Andy was back fit, it was right. You're back on the bench, and it was sort of. I was sort of in and out. I got a run of games at Cowdenbeath, and then. You know what I mean? I needed to play, and goalies need to play. You know what I mean? Every position needs to play, but a goalie needs to play. You know what I mean? There's only one position, and if you're not playing, then you know what I mean you're not going to get noticed. You know what I mean? I know there's some goalies in professional I've made a living of being a backup goalie, but it's just something that I've never seen myself as. I'm not interested in being a backup to anyone.
No, absolutely. And I suppose your next career move, that was you sort of set for being a starting keeper for the rest of your career. That move to Kelly, how did that come about then?
It came about. Davy Wilcox was the manager at the time. Davy seemed to want to get me. Obviously, he was also before he came to Kelty. He was manager at Crossgates, another local junior team. I remember he used to be on the phone to Keith Wright every year. And what are you doing with Alan this year? What are you doing with Alan this year? And I'd go and play a game for him, but then I'd go and it would be good, but I was just like, nah, I need to be playing higher than this. You know what I mean? I need to test myself more. And like Cowdenbeath would always call me back. But so Davey, I knew Davey came from that sort of, and then it come about and they got folk. Well, there was one I thought it was going to be out the door. I mean, Kelty were showing an interest, and Mixu and Keith Wright got sort of sacked, and Mixu Pat Linen come in, and I thought to myself, right, I'm going to give it one last shot. New manager, you know what I mean? I'm going to try and push to see what I can do. And I remember having in the week, the Tuesday, Thursday training session, doing really, really well. And I remember getting called into it was the night we were playing Partick in the Betfred Cup or whatever it was at the time. And I remember getting called into the office, and I'm thinking, right, I wonder what this could be. And they were like, look, I don't know you personally. You're highly thought of at the club. But I was like, oh, here we go. But he's like, in order for me to get some sort of budget, and Kelty have put a bid in for you, and they've offered you money. And you're like, for you, I think it'd be good for you to go and get a year's worth of games, and this time next year we'll see where we are. But at that time I was thinking, right, well, okay. But deep down I thought, well, if I'm going to leave, I'm not going to come back in the following year. So it's not a loan deal. You mean?
Yeah.
He's obviously seen the money. He's seen a budget, right? Kelty are going to pay for Flem, and there's more to my budget. So again, Kelty had a good reputation, and I knew some of the boys, having played through the youth football and that with them, and I thought, right, yeah, it was a bit gut wrenching to start with. You mean you don't want to take the step down from playing senior to junior at the time. You mean little did I know, but you mean at that age you're thinking, oh, that's you sort of thing.
Yeah.
I remember turning up the training, and obviously done a full pre-season with Cowdenbeath before, so it wasn't a case of me coming and having done nothing. I was fit and ready to go. And I remember just hit the ground running, like come to Kelty. You know what I mean? I felt good. You know what I mean? I was ready for this year to prove myself that I was a number one, and in the back of my head I always had aspirations to go back and play senior, because I felt as if I had unfinished business there. You know what I mean? I had a point to prove, but I was going to give Kelty my all.
Yeah, and you ended up obviously staying for a good bit of your a good chunk of your career. What was it like though when you first arrived at Kelty? What was the feeling? Was it, obviously you said a little bit disappointing to make that step down, but once you got settled in and started playing a few games, what was it that stood out about playing the junior football, and more importantly getting to start week in, week out?
Well, it was weird. It was weird to start with, because I remember coming in, and obviously I'd heard like Kelty had been relegated at the previous season because of issues and whatnot, and I was like, all right. But the whole plan was to bounce back up and go back straight into the Super League. I remember we played the cups, the League Cup section at the start, and I think we got beat off Crossgates, and I'm thinking, what have I done here? You know, I'm thinking, what Crossgates? You know, they shouldn't be beating Kelty. I remember going, what have I let myself in for? You know what I mean? But once, obviously, it was a new team for myself, and they had to get to know me. I had to get to know them, and as the season went on, it was good. I still think we should have won the game. We should have won that league. I don't think we've done that well on it. But we ended up getting. I think we finished fourth in my first season in the Fife League.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's not what I came for. You know what I mean? But having said that fourth place got us into the newly formed Premier League at the time. Halfway sort of through that season, Stevie come in, and obviously Davey had signed me, and I was sort of thankful for Davey for signing me. When Stevie come in, it was like we kept on again. Obviously, Stevie had a good reputation amongst Kelty. I mean, he was a player, he was a captain, he was a bit a legend in the club. So you were keen to do well for him, and you want to show a legend of the club what you're all about. But I remember being with Steve. Again, I've been on sort of done pre-season with Rosyth when he was manager of Rosyth as well. I sort of got every sort of junior team at the time wanted and knew who I was and were wanting to take me, but Cowden Beath always sort of put a block to it. So when Stevie eventually come in and he rocked up and he's like, eventually I can get to work with you. So that was, and obviously we got promotion into that East Premier League, and the second season was probably, in terms of my time at Kelty, was probably the best season that we had.
Yeah.
I say that it was the most rewarding in terms of what we've done that season.